let's first look at the differences from a 10,000-foot view of informative and persuasive speeches, and then we'll break it up and look at those independently. So let's start. An informative speech should never change someone's attitude. You're literally just giving them information where they say, I didn't know that, or I've learned something today. Usually they're not controversial. We're not jumping into a topic that would cause people to feel defensive, that their blood pressure would get raised, or they would clutch their necklace, or they would feel nervous. Now, persuasive speeches. Persuasion is usually incremental. By that we mean in little steps. We're not trying to get people to turn their whole lives upside down. We're looking for incremental changes. Persuasive speeches are usually a process. There's a psychology behind it. We can't jump in and say, today, I would like to tell you that you're wrong or you're dumb. And here is an area where you have a problem and how you're going to solve it. I want you to think about, if you've ever watched a reality show, an intervention, they don't typically go well. There's a process to getting people to shift their mindset or to change. Now, in persuasive speeches, they can be ethical, and sometimes when they're not presented well, they're not ethical. So we'll get into that just a little bit, but we want to add an ethical filter to everything that we say. Let's start, though, with the first one. We are speaking to inform. We're just handing people information. So we want to define our informative purpose. We're here to educate, to instruct, to train, to teach, maybe to create an awareness. It's important when you're putting together an informative speech that you use clear, simple language. If I were to ask you the most famous speeches of all time, you might say, Martin Luther King Jr., I have a dream. Those 4 words can be understood by an 8-year-old and an 80-year-old. We want to use clear, simple language because it sticks. When we use complicated jargon, if I'm trying to explain something scientific to you and I'm using a bunch of words you don't understand, your brain is hitting giant speed bumps and it takes a minute and I've moved on, but you're still stuck on a speed bump and you're trying to catch up. So it's important that we do that. We start simple, we can move complex, but we've got to pull people in slow. We're going to emphasize our main points. We're going to say them 3 different times. In our introduction, we're going to say, here's what we're talking about. Then we're going to break it up and talk about it. And then at the end, we're going to say, here are the main points that we have talked about. I often will compare a message to music in my classrooms. I think there's something to someone writing a song, and they usually use rhythm. Often they use rhyme, but it's important that you know they use repetition. That's how we remember it. So in an informative speech, we want to use the same thing. We also want to use signposts. We want to tell people consistently, just like we talked about transition statements. Here's where we're going. When I say first, let's jump into this, you know where we are. And when I say second, that's what we call a signpost or a clue to where we are. Finally, really good presenters encourage their audience to participate. You see these hands up, but if you've ever listened to someone in a work environment or in a school environment or maybe in a church environment, you'll say, by show of hands, or how many of you, your message doesn't matter if there's no one listening to it or learning. So you want to engage your audience, encourage their participation, make it feel like there is a little bit of back and forth. If they're all asleep, it's not that helpful and you were not effective. So we'll look at informative speeches, and again, you're going to present one in this class. And then in the next part, we'll jump into persuasive speaking.